And now, please welcome to the Zingers stage, the Wordplay Slayer, the Rib Tickle Ripper, the Knee Slap Slasher. Give it up, Sheboygan, for the Lithuanian Chupacabra himself, Mitch, Mr. Murph Maloney.
Good evening, Sheboygan. How are you feeling tonight? Pretty miserable? Me too. I got some bad news the other day. That my father had died of cancer. Aww. Has this ever happened to you? A close friend or relative dies from cancer? All of you? Pretty much everybody? I mean, there's nothing special or unique about my experience? Okay, so technically that happened a year ago. But for a stand-up comedian such as myself, it still feels like it happened just the other day. So a few weeks before that, my mother called me up and tells me to fly out to be with my dad because he's got cancer. Aww. So the next thing you know, I'm at the airport. And I don't know if any of you have been to the airport recently. Can we talk about people at the airport these days? You see what some of these people are wearing? So I'm at the airport, and you're not going to believe this one, but the gate of the plane that I'm flying out of, I swear to God this is true. Gate B9. B9, which is the opposite of the tumor in my father's throat, which was malignant, you see. So I fly out to the Pacific Northwest, and the next thing you know, I'm at the hospital, sitting next to him, and he's hooked up to a feeding tube and a morphine drip, the whole deal. He's recovering from this surgery where they drilled out a hole in the tumor in his esophagus, and another hole in his belly for the GI tube. And I'm like, I didn't have this on my bingo checklist. And don't get me started on what passes for food in the hospital these days. I'm not talking about the stale bagels in the cafeteria either. I'm talking about the brown-gray mush that they pump directly into your dying relative's stomach with a GI tube. What the heck do they put in that mush, anyway? I'd love to be the head chef of that company, right? And by the way, why do they call it that anyway? The GI tube? They ought to call it the hole in the stomach tube. I mean, who's making these things, right? Cobra Commander? So I'm sitting there, next to my father's hospital bed, and he's fading in and out of consciousness because of all the meds he's on. And I ask him how he's feeling. And he looks up at me. And he says to me, "It feels like the inside of my body is on fire. I can't stand being hooked up to these damn machines. And every test and exam is not only painful, but humiliating. It's been like some kind of a torture gauntlet." And those were the exact words my father used, I swear to God. He said, "Son, It's been like a torture gauntlet, and I can't handle any more tests or treatments or anything like that. I just want it to be over. And I said to him, "Okay, Dad, but before you go, I want to say thank you for giving me the gift of the perfect name for a death metal album if I ever put one out." Right? Torture Gauntlet? So my father says he wants to go straight to palliative care. He wants to skip the whole fighting cancer part and go straight to the dying part. I said, "Okay, Dad, let me get this straight. You can't deal with the agony of your existence. You don't see the point of making the effort to get through another day. And you just prefer to numb your senses with chemicals until the world fades away into nothingness. Is that right?" I guess the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, if you know what I'm saying. Now, I'm not suicidal per se. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm way too cowardly for that. But let's just say I'm somewhere on the spectrum, you know? The spectrum of self-destruction. I definitely have suicidal ideation. You've heard about this, right? Suicidal ideation, where you sort of fantasize about how the world would be a better place without you in it. Who doesn't think that sometimes? You'd have to be crazy not to, right? Looking at your father dying in his hospital bed, though, it'd make anybody ponder their mortality. Like, is there some small chance that I could get cancer, too? Is there something I might be doing, even, that might make it more likely that I could get cancer? Seriously, it's almost enough to make you want to quit smoking. I read the other day that for every alcoholic beverage you have, you lose 15 minutes of your life. Isn't that crazy? And I haven't worked it out exactly, but according to a little rough back-of-the-envelope math, if I'm lucky, maybe I have till next Tuesday. People ask me, "Aren't you worried about dying?" I'm like, "Buddy, I'm not worried. I'm just trying to make it look like an accident." So, we unhooked my dad from the machines and took him home to die as pleasantly as possible. And just a couple days later was Easter Sunday, so my sister and her boyfriend and my niece and nephew all came out for a family holiday. Now, I don't know about you, but the thing that really gets to me at these family reunion type situations are the roles. You know what I mean? The roles that everybody in the family is expected to play. Like, for instance, in my family, I'm expected to play the role of a functional alcoholic. You know what I mean? The role of a recreational cannabis addict. So my sister shows up with a ham and a big tray of scalloped potatoes from Costco. You ever been to this place, by the way? Costco? I mean, who needs a pallet full of Q-tips, am I right? There's no way you're gonna live that long. Trust me, death is closer than you realize. Anyway, so my sister shows up with a ham and potatoes and also a carton of eggs. So I ask her what the eggs are for, and she says, "They're for dying." I'm like, I'm sorry, did you say they're for dying? I thought maybe there was some sort of Maloney family death ritual involving a giant omelet that I was unaware of. I completely forgot that it was Easter. The eggs were for dying because it was Easter. If you want to know how different I am from my sister, you can start with the fact that she's a lady weightlifter, okay? Not your typical gym person. She's actually competed in bodybuilding contests. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just trying to paint the picture. My sister's one of these fitness and adventure type people. She likes to do things like bungee jumping and skydiving and polar plunging and turkey trotting, spin classes, crossfitting, tough muttering, or whatever it's called. Basically, if there's a waiver involved, she's in. And I'm all for people being healthy, especially as it pertains to my younger sister. But sometimes I get the feeling that she looks down on my approach to health and fitness. I don't know, it's just something subtle about her tone. Like, I mentioned to her once that I was feeling a little under the weather, and she said to me, "Yeah, I don't really get sick because I eat really healthy and I get exercise." I have to admit, I took that a little bit personally. Like, what do you think I am? Diseased and sedentary? I take care of myself. I drink water, sometimes on purpose. Okay, maybe I get sick once in a while, but I also experience joy, so it's kind of a trade-off. Different paths, I guess. Now, things are a little tense between me and my sister, because the last time I saw her, I said something that really set her off. I mentioned that I found that band, the Lumineers, to be a bit corny. You remember the Lumineers? The band that answered the question, "What's the sound of three guys in suspenders clapping?" They had that one stomp and holler, mumble along ditty that you couldn't escape about 15 years ago. She'd mentioned going to one of their big outdoor concerts, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, did you lose a bet or something?" So she accused me of being a snob. Can you believe that? Just because my taste is better than hers? I think her accusation of snobbery is unfair, and frankly, a little déclassé. She only thinks I'm a snob because, sadly, she's a terrible judge of character, in addition to being a terrible judge of music. But she's my little sister, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings or anything, so I said, "I am so sorry that you made it this far in life thinking that a sing-along jug band jamboree trio is good music. I mean, honestly, I feel as though I've failed you as a brother. But it's Easter dinner and our father is dying, so I'm on my best behavior, right? I'm even trying to make conversation with my sister's boyfriend, and let's just say we don't have a whole lot in common, okay? For starters, he loves golf. Golf. Are you kidding me? The so-called sport where you're expected to get up, carry around a bag, hit a golf ball around? I can't think of anything I'd rather do less than golf. He lives on the edge of a golf course, this guy, so he can play whenever he wants. And he plans his vacations around traveling to other golf courses. I'm not saying everyone that golfs is a vapid dullard. I'm just insinuating it. And he drives one of those giant white pickup trucks for no good reason. You live in a planned community with a landscaping crew, dude. What are you hauling? And I wouldn't want to accuse somebody of being unethical just because of the breed of dog they own, but My sister's boyfriend's got one of these French bulldogs. Right? Frenchies, they call them. The aristocrats of genetic compromise. They don't bark, they wheeze. They're wheezing little pop-eyed meatloafs with attitude. And you want to know a secret? If you go to France, you don't even see any of these dogs. It's false advertising. I swear, it's true. I went to France once, and I didn't see one so-called French bulldog. Hundreds of dogs I saw on the streets of Paris, all different kinds. Not one Frenchie. I don't want to promote conspiracy theories or anything, but the only explanation is these dogs are the unfortunate byproduct of some sort of lab accident that they're offloading onto gullible, trend-chasing suburban Americans. I'm not saying that my sister's boyfriend is off-putting. I'm saying he's probably off-putting at any given moment because he's a very avid golfer. So, anyway, I'm trying to make conversation with this guy, and at some point he inevitably says, "It is what it is." What a stupid way to bring a conversation screeching to a halt. It is what it is, the Zen koan for blockheads. My sister and her kids and her boyfriend went home, and I spent the next few days with my dying father. And we had some good chats. One day, he tells me that he's sorry. So I'm like, "Why are you sorry, Dad?" And he says, "I'm sorry you never made it as a professional comedian." Which I couldn't help but taking a little bit personally. And then he says, "But I've always admired your creativity." I said, "Dad, I'm doing great. I've got this upcoming gig in Sheboygan. The only reason you don't see me on TV or selling out stadiums is because I refuse to sell out. I maintain my integrity. I never compromised my act for some big payday." And he said to me, "There you go, son. That's exactly what I'm talking about." So I changed the subject. I said, "Hey, how about a joke?" And I told him jokes from a little joke book I bought. It had a lot of St. Peter at the Gates of Heaven jokes, which he seemed to particularly enjoy. And I'm not saying I was killing it, but a man did lose his life, so. But now everybody's talking about being woke. Have you heard about this? Wokeness? I'm technically required by law to mention it in the act. But here's my question. Is it better to be woke or not to be woke? That's my question. Like, just hypothetically, say you're trying to care for your father in his final days on Earth, for instance. Is it better to take it easy with the meds so he can be woke enough to have conversations with his loved ones and participate in decisions regarding his medical choices? Or is that just buying into the woke agenda? I'll tell you this, my dad, pretty anti-woke near the end there. I guess a lot of old white guys eventually get pretty anti-woke, and my father was no exception, 'cause he took as much morphine as they'd give him. He was a substance abuse counselor most of his life, but he died a junkie. Ain't that the darndest thing? Who could blame him, right? Being woke just feels exhausting. You know what I mean? Like physically upright and making decisions. You ever make this mistake? You ever get on the internet to try to get some medical advice? You should never go to the internet for medical advice, right? The week I was staying with my dad, you'll never guess what I did. That's right, I got on the internet, seeking medical information. Now, like I said, I get the allure of self-annihilation as much as anyone. I say everything in this life is more trouble than it's worth. And the root problem underneath all of it is the being alive part. So if I ever get terminal cancer, I'm skipping straight to hospice, day one. Don't even wheel me past the ICU. Just give me a robe, a remote, and a nurse named Tina who calls me sweetie while she fills up the drip. But my dad loved being alive more than anyone you ever met. And he seemed to be in a much better state mentally than when he told me about the torture gauntlet. So I wanted to make sure that his decision to say hasta la vista sooner than later was an informed choice. So I told him what I'd read on the internet, which is that people with a similar diagnosis as him, after a single cycle of radiation therapy, which is pretty much painless for most patients, can live another 18 to 24 months. I asked him if he maybe wanted to reconsider having a consultation with an oncologist. I said, I know you don't want to be a burden on Mom, but I could maybe stay out here for a few weeks or even months and drive you to your appointments and everything. I'll never forget what he said next. He said, son, do you think you could stick your finger up my ass? Because he had these suppositories that he might have to put up there, and I thought he might need some help. He says, I could never ask your mother to do something like that. So cancer can really bring families closer together. That's what I'm trying to say here. I mean, you talk about your father-son bonding experience. So I flew back home, thinking that my dad had at least a few more weeks to go. But then, exactly 1 year ago, just the other day, I got the call from my mom that my father had shuffled off the farm. I mean, kicked his mortal bucket. I mean, bought the coil. I think you know what I'm trying to say. So I wasn't there when he actually died, but according to my mother, it was about as peaceful as you could want. He had a pair of last responders there. You know, the first responders get all the credit, right? Firefighters, EMTs, the ones who bust through the door and save the puppy or whatever. But let's give a shout out to the last responders. You know who I'm talking about, the palliative care nurses, the hospice crew, the quiet warriors in soft sneakers and cardigans. If anybody here tonight brought their pots and pans to the club, let's give a respectful clanging to honor our last responders. Thanks to the last responders out there for administering the controlled opiate overdose, which is ultimately how it goes down. If you're lucky, if you have good insurance, that's the best case scenario. It isn't the worst way to go, that's for sure. Everybody knows the worst way to go is being ripped apart by a pack of shark grizzly bear hybrids while 1,000 car alarms go off at full volume. So in the days and weeks after my father died, I thought back to that day in the hospital when he talked about going through a torture gauntlet. And I thought, should I be listening to death metal right now? Like, is the whole raison d'etre of death metal to help you deal with death? It didn't feel right to just listen to another podcast or the latest Olivia Rodrigo album or something, so I did a deep dive down the death metal rabbit hole. Or maybe I should say, I descended screaming into the obsidian chasm of death metal, where melody dies and riffs feast on the bones of the weak. I hadn't even thought much about death metal before. I didn't even know who Chuck Schuldiner was, if you can believe that. I thought death metal was just for getting deposed dictators to leave their compounds or something. So I explored the sprawling, blood-soaked realm that is death metal. I listened to some classics of the genre like Cause of Death by Obituary and Left Hand Path by Entomb. And I found that it really struck the right chord. A distorted, low-tuned power chord. Was I wallowing a bit? Obviously, but more importantly, I felt something. Probably the bass physically dislodging a kidney. And that's how death metal became my grief counselor. Death metal, when you think about it, it's really just scream therapy, but with better merch. And now I feel like we may need to rethink this whole Kubler-Ross stages of grief thing. Like add in a stage where you listen to the complete Morbid Angel back catalog. I wrote a joke specifically for death metal heads. Would you like to hear it? Okay, so a Norwegian death metal band is flying out of Oslo, right? They get to security, go through the scanner, and the security agent sees something strange. He goes over to the band, doesn't seem fazed by the corpse paint or anything, and he asks them, what's in the oversized duffel bag? I'm translating from Norwegian, obviously. The guitarist looks up and says, it's just 6 rotting sheep heads, and the drummer says, we're taking them to the Metal Inferno Festival in Switzerland. We're gonna hoist them on pikes and set them on fire during the show. The security agent says, you can't bring 6 rotting sheep heads onto a plane. Without missing a beat, the lead vocalist leans in and says, why not? They're carry-on. And the agent says, unfortunately, Norwegian Air doesn't allow baggage of this size in the cabin. You're going to have to check it. Get it? Carry on? But death metal's not for everyone, that's for sure. Let's face it, it's basically angry poetry being screamed over a haunted dishwasher. There's a band called Defecation. Not to be confused with malignant defecation, morbid defecation, or urethral defecation, public defecation, necropsy defecation, or defecation after death, putrid defecation, who have a song called Involuntary Bowel Movement, which is kind of a jam. These are all real bands, you guys. Let's see, there's also defecation area, altar defecation, divine defecation, painful defecation, post-mortem defecation, sexual defecation, mutual assured defecation, which is a pretty awesome band name actually, autophagus defecation, whatever that is, deep throat defecation, that's us, defecation plow, defecate, defecated dog, and of course, Dayton, Ohio's beloved grindcore quartet, Bowel Movement. There's a lot of death metal bands, you guys. Now, as far as I know, my dad never heard a death metal song his whole life. But he did have a death-themed playlist that he made and listened to over and over again in his final days. Only it wasn't death metal, it was more like death easy listening. You know, with songs like Time in a Bottle or Sounds of Silence, Seasons in the Sun. It was like a K-Tel Records all-time super bummers collection. Sorry to change the subject, but there's another hot topic that I'm legally required to discuss. Cancel culture. Now, I hear a lot of people complaining about cancel culture these days. A lot of famous comedians, like myself, complaining because they've been criticized for being racially insensitive or being an active pedophile or something. But But that's not getting canceled. I know what being canceled really is. Because I got canceled by my own family. Let me explain. So just the other day, 9 months ago, I fly back out there for my father's celebration of life. And by the way, celebration of life? Kind of euphemistic, right? Considering the one being celebrated isn't in attendance, shall we say. When did they come up with celebration of life? Isn't an actual celebration of life just called a birthday party? I guess you call it a celebration of life if you want to grieve, but also serve sangria. It's like mourning, but with hummus. Celebration of life is the soft focus Instagram filter for the inevitable yawning chasm that awaits us all. So I go to this memorial service, and not only is my sister not talking to me, which started for unexplained reasons before my father even died, but my niece and my nephew are also giving me the full silent treatment. Aww. My mother's talking to me, but minimally. Very standoffish. It takes me a little while to connect the dots, and I say to myself, I think I'm being shunned here. I've been black-sheeped. I'm getting estranged. All of which made for a pretty awkward boat ride when all of us floated out to spread my father's ashes on the bay. We took a boat out, whole family there. Nobody spoke to me the entire time. Aww. Just silent judgment and a Bluetooth speaker playing John Denver. And that's how I found out I'd been canceled at my father's celebration of life. Aww. Now that's what I call getting deplatformed. Did you even know that the silent treatment is an option available to adults? It shouldn't be. The silent treatment is like emotional chemical warfare. There's no defense, no hazmat suit that can protect you. All you can do is inhale the betrayal like it's mustard gas. It should be banned. You should be tried at the Hague for war crimes against siblingship or something. And the thing about this cancel culture business is there's no way to get uncanceled that I know of anyway. Does anybody know how to get uncanceled? By your own family? Well, if you think of something, I'll be around after the show. The thing that kills me is I thought I was the cool uncle. I guess a career in show business doesn't count for what it used to. I don't know. Maybe cool uncles don't even exist after the kids grow up. I can remember realizing that my cool uncle was actually a giant loser. And I definitely thought I was a good big brother. You know what? Scratch that. I was a good brother. I did all the stuff. I always gave her a part in my backyard productions of Buck Rogers or Scooby-Doo. I helped out with her early hairstyling experiments. I defended her against bullies on the playground. I went to her softball and basketball games. I bought her literally dozens of different animal-shaped candles over the years because I didn't know what else to get her, and that seemed like a safe choice. And I never hurt her feelings. On purpose, I mean. I swear to my Dark Lord Baphomet. But what the heck did I do to get canceled? What did I do to deserve getting the stink eye and the cold shoulder at Grandpa's funeral? All I can do is guess, because answers are hard to come by when you're canceled. Is she envious of my glamorous lifestyle as a famous comedian? Is it the Lumineers thing? Because if this is about the Lumineers, I swear I am all out of material about mopey Caucasian festival folk jug bands. Not to mention that these days I'm into the corniest music of all time. There's nothing cheesier than unironic Satanists with face paint and a fog machine. So, if she wants to listen to dress-up hobos in floppy hats singing sea shanties, that's her business. But being cranky and critical is kind of my whole shtick. I mean, love language. I thought that was a Maloney family thing. I thought she was in on the joke this whole time. Turns out my sister is one of those people who just can't take a joke at all. Turns out she's got no sense of humor whatsoever. Aww. Which I guess should have been obvious the moment she told me her favorite comedian was Joe Coy. I guess it's not enough to be politically correct nowadays. You're expected to be emotionally correct, too. Maybe it's just easy to cut me off because I'm a stubby dead branch on the family tree. It's easy to saw me off if you don't see any benefit to having me around. To them, I'm just another degenerate chuckle chucker. For my mother and my sister, the whole point of everything is passing along your genes, which, as far as I can tell, is also the philosophy of the cockroach or the rodent. But some of us have a higher calling. Spinoza called it the causa sui, the drive to become the cause of oneself. Ernest Becker called it our immortality project. For professional stand-ups such as myself, that's what this is. A tight 45. It's not even about the laughs. It doesn't even matter if nobody else ever even hears this. The important thing is that it's on the record. That's why you never cross a stand-up. Because if you do, it's going into the act, and it's not going to make you look good. It's not my fault I was born into the body of a comedian. Somebody has to say it. Turns out that it's me. Now, some of you might be thinking, so what's the actual difference between a comedian and an asshole? That's a good point. Feel free to use the terms interchangeably. But what does it mean, really, when the people who know you the best, the people who've known you forever, hate your guts? No one studies you like a sibling does. They've been running a full-time longitudinal study since they were in diapers. So when that person can't give you a passing grade, it's hard not to take that personally. I had no idea that my father was the only person in the family who actually liked me, which is a whole other kick in the ribs, realizing that the one person in the family that actually liked you is the dead one. I'm still working on a punchline for this part. Sorry. I must have a lump in my throat. I don't mean that euphemistically, like I'm feeling emotional or something. I mean, between my poor lifestyle choices and my genetic predisposition, I must have some kind of cancerous growth in my throat. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but probably not. Both possibilities seem likely. It's like Schrodinger's tumor. I'm simultaneously convinced I have cancer and in complete denial about it. Not enough to prevent me from saying it to a nightclub full of people in Sheboygan, but enough to prevent me from seeing a doctor or doing anything about it. You know, Don Rickles used to do a bit at the end of each performance where he would do a blanket apology for everybody in the audience that he'd just humiliated for 90 straight minutes. And I always thought that was kind of cowardly, to be honest. And frankly, now I'd like to do the same thing, just in case. So if I could just ask the piano player, Belphegor Bloodbath, to play something, let's see, maybe a little Cannibal Corpse? Inhumane Harvest would be great if you know it, Belphegor. Great. Firstly, I'd like to apologize to anybody who got their feelings hurt by anything I said tonight. I only roast the ones I love and all that crap. And I know this is a funny way of showing love, and by funny, I mean emotionally distant and intermittently cruel, as well as objectively hilarious. And for the record, in the unlikely scenario that my sister's boyfriend ever hears this, if he even still is my sister's boyfriend, I have no way of knowing, I want to say he actually seemed like a pretty decent guy. Honestly. He was nicer to me at my dad's memorial than most of my actual blood relatives. And hey, it's a hard life. And all we've got is this tiny sliver of time, so if he wants to spend it golfing, making deeply questionable choices about motor vehicles and dog breeds, hey, that's his journey. And I'm pretty sure he also lifts weights, so it's probably better to not be on his enemies list. And one more thing about my sister's possibly former boyfriend. He's the only person even loosely connected to my family who ever encouraged me to do stand-up. In fact, I might not have done this if it weren't for him, so if this whole thing has ruined what's left of my family, that's actually his fault. And please, if anybody out there is still in touch with my sister and her kids, tell them I love them. I miss them. Tell them I'm sorry for whatever it is I did. And I'd like to be part of their lives again, because they're the only family I've got left. Unfortunately, for them. Because if they don't make it right, I will haunt them. When my flesh is unbound from this mortal coil, when the worms taste truth, and my name is carved from the tongues of the dead, then shall the veil split, and from the sulfur pits beneath eternity's black lung, I will rise, cloaked in rot, crowned in rust. My ribs will be flutes for the wailing of the wretched, my teeth a rosary of shattered commandments. And I shall call upon Vorakthu, harvester of guilt, to ride with me. We shall blacken your weight rooms with soot and antlers. We shall turn your spin class into a circle of salt and bone. Blood will rain from peloton screens, and in every green smoothie shall be the putrid bile of your abandoned brother. And this torturous haunting shall follow you for many years. Because life is long when you, eat healthy and get exercise. And I've only got until approximately next Tuesday. Thank you, Sheboygan, and hail Satan!